Okay, this is the A03 for insanity. It is a great one to evaluate because there's so much wrong with it. You won't even get all these points into an essay. So you have to combine A03 with A01. So do have a look at that video. Okay, first point you can say about insanity is a very old defence. It was created in 1843. The term insanity is offensive these days. Legal insanity is very different to medical insanity, and we will see that as we talk through this. It's actually only used about 20 times a year. So you could argue it's not even really needed now in modern day society. If you were charged with murder, I would plead diminished responsibility. Much better result of this defence because diminished responsibility results in your conviction being reduced to a manslaughter conviction, and the judge has a range of sentencing. So in 1843, very little was known about mental health conditions. And I think, really the law needs to be updated. We now know a lot more. And actually what the Law Commission suggested in 2013 was creating, like they said, get rid of insanity, there's loads wrong with it. Let's have a defence called a lack of capacity defence. And I think that's much less offensive. There's much less of a stigma from claiming that defence. In their report, they also suggested changing the burden of proof, so putting the burden upon the prosecution to say that the defendant didn't lack capacity. In other words, the defendant did have capacity. So the fact at the moment that the burden of proof is upon the defendant causes all sorts of problems. One of the main things in criminal law is that the defendant is innocent till proven guilty. But with insanity, here we have got a defendant having to prove that he or she is suffering from insanity. So why do they have to prove anything? Article 6 of the European Convention on Human Rights says that you are entitled to a fair trial. And I would argue that by having to prove something when you're mentally not capable of doing so goes against this notion of the right to a fair trial. One positive thing, because it's easy to be negative, but one positive thing is that the sentencing powers are now wider. So in 1991, remember they introduced a wider range. Before 1991, you would have to go indefinitely to a mental institution. So a lot of people would rather plead guilty than actually use the defence. The fact that people were pleading guilty instead of using the defence shows that there is something wrong with the defence. The other issue when looking at disease of the mind is that judges are not doctors, yet they are categorising what is a disease of the mind. It's really quite offensive to say that somebody who suffers an epileptic fit or has too little insulin then needs to claim the defence of insanity if they commit a crime. We wouldn't class those people as medically insane, so that kind of illustrates how legal insanity and medical insanity are very different. With diabetes, we actually split it into two separate things. We say taking too little insulin is insanity, Hennessy. Taking too much insulin is an external factor, quick, and that's automatism. Now, as a defendant, you would actually be better off taking too much insulin because automatism, if you are successful, results in a full acquittal. So it seems illogical, really, to split diabetes into two things. The next issue is the fact that the term wrong means legal wrong. This means if the defendant knows what they're doing is illegal, they're not insane. So imagine a psychopath, somebody with severe mental issues, and they can't help themselves, or they hear voices telling them to kill, and they know they're killing, so they know the nature of their act, and they know it's illegal to do so. That person in English law is not insane, when clearly, medically, they are insane. So that is quite problematic. The other issue is to feel a little bit sorry for the jury here. They have to listen to complex medical evidence. You'll have two conflicting medical experts in court, so it's going to conflict and that's going to be confusing for them. There's quite a lot of evidence to suggest that jurors actually misapply the defence. So they, in the case of Sutcliffe, he was a paranoid schizophrenic. They denied him insanity and they denied him diminished responsibility because I think they were so horrified by all of his crimes. So there are more points than this. It's good that we give a defence to somebody who's mentally incapable. However, there is a lot wrong with this defence, and I think an essay question could focus on whether it needs reforming, whether it's fit for purpose in modern day society.